God, I genuinely read that and wanted to reach into my throat and rip it out. It's so cute.
What a beautiful way to say that's what you're packing.
What? Hi guys, I look a hot mess. It's been a very, very long and busy day, but today my company is celebrating 4 years of being in business. So I surprised them by baking some of my wonderful, delicious cookies. So we've got chocolate chip and we've got red velvet, and we're plating them all up here. And we've also got raspberry and white chocolate, and we've got these trick candles that we just keep relighting. And we've got like a big, like golden number 4 balloon, which is really, really fun. But that is what my week started off with. Goodbye. Good morning, everyone. So update, I did actually manage to get quite a bit of reading done, which I was surprised about because I was knackered. I think I got around 130 pages done, which means that I have 150 pages. I have 150 pages left till I finish the book, which is very doable for like I can easily do that in about an hour and a half, 2 hours. The only issue is, so I'm meeting with the book club at around 5:30. It's 12. And I'm sat in my car vlogging. See, this is my problem because I need to bake. So I'm on my way to the supermarket now to get some ingredients because I'm gonna bake something called كحلية النحل, which in English is, well, the literal translation is the bee's honey. But so that's literally wrong. First of all, it's خلية النحل. I don't know why I said كحلية. And second of all, it literally translates to beehive. I don't know where I got that from because I knew that. So stupid Arab. But it actually is a honeycomb bread, which is really, really fun. I'll show you when I'm making it. But I'm going to make that because she's cooking for us and she's making everything for us. And I'm Arab and I can't enter someone's house without something in my hands. So I think that I can get it done. So I need to make the dough, and the dough needs an hour to rise. So the way I'm thinking is, while the dough is rising, I'm going to clean my room and then get some reading done. And then I'm going to split the dough up, and then it's going to need another half an hour to rise. And in that time, I'm going to read again. And then I'm going to make everything else that I need to make for it. And then I'm going to put it in the oven, get dressed, get ready. I think I'll be done reading by then, hopefully. Dear God. If not, I'll have like 50 pages left. And then I'll take the stuff out the oven, I'll let it cool, I'll finish getting ready, and then I'll get in the car and I'll go to book club. And I think I should get it done. At best, I think I can get maybe 220 pages into the book. The book is only 280. So I think that is very doable. Also, look how sunny it is. Okay, it's faded when I said that, but look how sunny it is. Can you see that light? Like, I'm in a t-shirt and overalls. Like, this weather, I'm rocking with it. And literally, I don't know why I'm still here because I literally need to get going. Okay, bye. The ingredients have been secured and I am ready to go. All of the ingredients have now been secured and I'm ready to go. I've got the ingredients written on my sheet here, and I'm gonna either talk you guys through what it is that I'm doing or also discuss the book, because this is the two things that I know, books and bakes. So let's begin. One hot tip that I've found when baking stuff that requires yeast, like stuff that's like bread or something, is I like to put the wets in first, the liquid ingredients. So we're gonna start with the melted butter. Oh, I need an apron, 1 second. Next is my yogurt. Now, I normally really, really like thick yogurt that needs to be sort of mixed until it's liquidy, but because I'm using this for baking, I don't really want to play with the texture. So I got one of those like wet, you see that? Like natural, fat-free type of yogurts, and I use that because I just think that they have the best result when baking. Warm milk. Fun fact about eggs, if you eat 1 egg and 1 orange, you have eaten every single vitamin you need to eat. Not the amount that you need to eat of each vitamin, but eggs have every single vitamin in them, except for vitamin C. So if you eat an egg and an orange, you've hit all your vitamin, you just don't have enough of it. Anyway, So that's the egg done. Now we're going to move on to the dry ingredients. Flour always goes last when I'm making dough like this. I just feel like that gives me the best texture. So we're going in with some sugar, some yeast. Now I like to buy instant dry yeast because I don't have time to sit and wait for the yeast to activate. I'm a very busy person. Now there are exact measurements for salt, but I kind of feel like measure with your heart, you know? And then finally is when we go in with the flour. Plain flour, not self-raising, because we're not making cake, we're making bread. Cool, so those are the ingredients done. So now we need to mix the dough. It's going to need to mix for quite a while because it's going to be sticky at first, and I want to mix it until it's not too sticky, and I might need to add a bit more flour depending. I had my oven on for like 10 minutes at a very low temperature just because it's cold outside. So we're gonna cover it, we're gonna put it in there. The oven is off now. We're gonna put it in there with the door slightly open just so it's a warm environment for the yeast and the dough to rise. Okay, bye. Okay, the dough is rising, the room is clean, the bed is made, the laundry is done and put away. The only thing left for me to do is read, and I have 45 minutes to go. So if I know my reading pace, I think I can get through maybe around 50, if I'm good enough, 55 pages. In terms of just like a brief overview of the book and how I'm finding it so far, I'm absolutely adoring it. It's just, it feels so surreal to me to read a book set in Lebanon. I've never read anything like this before. So when she speaks about Beirut and when she speaks about the streets and the vendors and the people and the traffic and the electricity that never works and the traffic lights that are never on, it feels like home. It feels soft and comforting and safe. And despite the fact that this is set well, starting in the 50s into the 80s, the 90s, you know, the Lebanese Civil War, it still feels like nothing about Lebanon necessarily has changed, which I absolutely adore. One thing I want to note, which I'm going to elaborate more on at the end of the video when I'm giving my full review and full overview, is Rabih Alamuddin, the author, is a man, and never in my life have I read a book, well, rarely do I read books by men, but never in my life have I read a book written by a man, told from a woman's perspective that feels like it was written by a woman. Never in my life did I think I would say an above middle-aged Arab man has truly encompassed what it is to be a lonely woman. I don't know how to put it, like the way he writes, the way he describes bodies and hair and faces and feelings is very female gaze, is very, I'm not, you know when you read some books written by men from the perspective of women, it's like, my boobies bounce joyfully. What does that mean? What does that actually even mean? He doesn't do that. He rarely speaks about bodies. And when he does, he speaks about them the way that we would. He speaks about, my aching joints, or, the scars on my skin, or, like the bubbles of cellulite. Like, it's never done in an inherently male gaze sexual way, which makes me feel so comfortable and so at home. He writes the female friendships the way a woman would perceive female friendships. He writes of gossip. He writes of, romance. He writes of hatred of men in the way that like a woman would, and he does it. I really, really enjoy reading it, and I keep forgetting. I had to look it up on Google yesterday. If you go on my history, you'll see me looking up his name and looking at Google images just to double check that it's actually a man and not a woman with like an androgynous name. And it is, and he does it so well and so beautifully, and he encompasses Lebanon, and he encompasses just literary beauty in ways that I'm struggling to describe, and hopefully after my session with the book club tonight, I will be able to coherently explain it better. But something, like one final point I want to make. He's really funny, and it's difficult to be funny when describing some of the contents of this book. You're describing civil war, brutality, murder, loneliness, ostracization, shame, being separated from your loved ones. But he does it in a really funny way, especially the first few chapters before it gets really serious. Some of the things he says are really funny. So she had an arranged marriage when she was young, and she's speaking about the first time they were to consummate the marriage, and he did it in the dark, so she waited until he was asleep so she could take a peek under the covers to know what it was that she was looking at. She says, the disappointment of discovering a worm in place of the monster. Of this I was supposed to be afraid. This, the forge of fertility. What a violation. What a beautiful way to say that's what you're packing. So this is when a bunch of men break into her house during the Civil War in 1982, and she's got an AK-47 that she got from someone else, which is explained later in the book, and she scares them, and she says, the men in fatigues took one look at the attacking madwoman and ran out the door.
Not silently, I might add. I chased after them, but only to the landing since they'd already reached the ground floor. Running, in an unathletic manner, I might add. 12 independent limbs, jerking and flailing haphazardly. A stampede of cartoon cows. Like, girl, it is a war! But it's stuff like that, and I'm sure there's a lot more, but I'll discuss it all towards the end when I'm giving the full review of this book. But it's so good and I'm having so much fun. My only criticism is, and I know it's relevant to the character, it's a little bit too on the nose with the literature. You know, I get it. She's a translator. She's obsessed with literature. She's a reader. It's the only thing she does. But it feels to me just a touch too on the nose. It's just too much of it. It's every page there's a big section or a big reference to like classic literature. And it's just, I love that. I love it as much as the next, but it feels a bit too much for me. But everything else outweighs it, so I'm not necessarily complaining just yet. Anyway, I'm gonna go read.
Oh my god, twins.
The dough has absolutely doubled in size. Okay, they've been divided and rolled into balls. I do need to flatten them before I stuff them, but I'm gonna cut the cheese first so that the dough's not out and like getting dry from outside of the towel. So that's what we're gonna do. The pan is buttered. The cheese, hello, is sliced. Time to flatten our doughs, stuff them with cheese, put them in that, and then you'll see. Okay, they are in the tray. I'm going to give them a light egg wash. I'm going to sprinkle some sesame and black seeds on them, and I'm going to let them rest again for half an hour to rise once more, and then we'll bake them. It's going to go into the oven and rest. Okay, now while that is rising, I'm going to make the sugar syrup. It's going to be a honey-based sugar syrup because it's a honey-based dish. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, so everything is mixed and cooking on the stove now. In terms of duration and how to cook it is entirely personal, and it just depends on the type of texture and thickness that you like. I like it to be between runny and thick, so I guess like semi-thick. I don't know what I would call that. So I'm gonna leave it until it seems like it's just about to solidify, and then I'm gonna stop because it eventually obviously solidifies when you take it out. My favorite thing about making dough is watching how they rise and their shapes change after you rest them.
Okay, I'm currently in the process of getting ready, and I just want to show you something. I think it's so cute. I'm getting ready to go to my book club wearing my Jane Austen earrings. It's so cute. What? So it is now ready. While it is hot is when you need to pour the sugar syrup on it so that it sticks and it softens while it cools down. I still don't know if the dough worked because of all the flour I had to add, but I'm just getting the sugar syrup now. Oh, looks so good. Bro, I'm gonna cry. I wanna try it right now. I'm on my way. I got lucky. My mum is dropping me off, so I'm gonna finish the rest of this. Good morning. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I'm sleep deprived. I'm well fed. I'm revitalized after a night with girls. But did I discuss the book? No. As can be expected from a group of girls who are all fasting getting together for a dinner spread that is genuinely just absolutely mouth-wateringly fantastic, shout out to Kana, we didn't get time to read the book because we were chit-chatting away. So I'm gonna just tell you the thoughts that I would have told you yesterday, because I have actually officially finished the book now. So I feel like now that I've actually read the book, before I go into everything I loved about it and the things that I criticize about it, I'm gonna give you a brief synopsis that isn't just what's written on the back of the book. And it's about Alia, or Alia, however you want to call it, who's, I think 62 years old, and she's living alone in her flat in Beirut, and she's divorced. Her husband divorced her one day when he just decided he didn't want to be with her anymore, and she decided to never remarry, which sort of ostracized her from her community at the time. And then it runs through her experience within the Civil War. It runs through her different like sexual, not necessarily romantic, just sexual experiences, how she chooses to personally isolate herself within her books and her literature. She's a self-taught, self-made translator, but she never publishes any of her work. She does them as her own personal project every year, and she starts every year with a new translation, and she has a rule of books that she would translate based on the languages she translates from. So her translations are never completely accurate because she never translates the original texts. It circles across her life and her relationships with herself, her relationships with her loneliness, her relationships with her neighbors and other women, past lives, current lives, her siblings, her half-siblings, her parents. It's a non-linear narrative, so we're consistently oscillating between past and present, and we don't necessarily know what year she's oscillating back to until she tells it to us. So it sort of goes to the Civil War, then it goes to the years of her as a child before the Civil War, then it goes to years after the Civil War, then it goes back to the Civil War, and it's just a consistent oscillation back and forth. But it feels you think it's confusing and it sounds confusing, but it's really nowhere near as confusing as you would think. Like, the distinctions are clear once the speaker makes them clear. I've already mentioned something I love about Rabiah's writing is that I do not feel like it is a man that is writing this book. I do not feel that it is a man that is writing from an old woman's perspective. It feels so real. It feels so authentic and raw and just unfiltered. It reads almost like a memoir. This book is definitely not for people who read books for plot. It is a book for people who do not care whether or not there is a plot there and only want to learn about the history of the environment and the culture of the environment and the person speaking. That is what this book is. There is no plot. There really isn't. It reads like a memoir. It reads like you're reading someone's diary. And because they're, experiencing old age, they don't really necessarily know what time of year they're talking about. Alia has a very painful relationship with herself, and she's very comfortable in her solace and her loneliness, but she knows that she likely probably shouldn't be. She hates everyone around her, but at the same time she doesn't, and she thinks everyone around her hates her, but at the same time she don't. She has an incredibly complicated relationship with her mother and her family, by which I mean she is estranged from them and they're only around there to cause chaos and give her trouble. But it's really sad when you get towards the end of the book and you see her trying to reform this relationship with her mother, despite the fact that her mother hates her and she hates her back. So I'm now going to split this review into 3 parts. I'm going to look at the things that were written that were absolutely beautiful, that made me love the book. I'm going to look at the things that gave me the palpable feeling of Beirut and Lebanon. And then I'm going to look at what it is necessarily that I didn't enjoy. So going into the first part of that, I want to read you a quote. Most of us believe we are who we are because of the decisions we've made, because of events that shaped us, because of the choices of those around us. We rarely consider that we're also formed by the decisions we didn't make, by events that could have happened but didn't, or by our lack of choices for that matter. It's just so beautiful. The receding perspective of my past smothers my presence. Remembering is the malignancy that feasts on my now. That's so painful. That's so agonizing. I don't know. Maybe it's part of womanhood to understand that type of solace, that type of just like nostalgic, painful loneliness. But he does it so well. Honestly, I genuinely had to continuously keep checking that I had the right author in mind when I looked him up, because I just couldn't wrap my head around the fact that a man was writing womanhood so well. And then again, 100 pages later, no loss is felt more keenly than the loss of what might have been. No nostalgia hurts as much as nostalgia for things that never existed. Oh my God, I genuinely read that and wanted to reach into my throat and rip it out. It was just so painful. The lump in my throat that grew, I was like, oh, okay, that was for me. That there was written for me, wasn't it? It was just, I don't know how he does it. And these 2 quotes are not rarities within the book. Every other page in this book has a quote like this that just sort of makes you choke. It sort of makes you go, oh, he understands women. He understands womanhood here. He understands pain and loneliness and nostalgia and melancholy, etc., etc., etc. It was just, I cannot fault his literary talent. I cannot. On the topic of literary talent, we can now move on to his delivery of Lebanon. He writes of the first bookstore Alia ever worked in, and he describes it as a ground floor store with an inadequate picture window in a distressed building off a main street and no foot traffic. I can genuinely tell you 3 different bookstores I've gone to in Beirut that fit this description perfectly. I think I even have a picture of one I went into with my friend. And it's just, the books are strewn everywhere. They're not necessarily alphabetical order or author order or even genre specific. They're just sort of, you know, thrown about and put in piles, and they look tidy and they look sweet, but they're just there, and, you know, the languages are mixed up and they're all confused, and it's just, it gives an authenticity to it. And he describes the way that the bookstore smells when you walk in, and that is exactly what it smelt like when I was there. It is Lebanon just encapsulated so wonderfully. And then when discussing just the irreliability of being in a city like Beirut and how nothing ever functions the way that you want it to, she says, does reliability reinforce your illusion of control? If so, I wonder if in developed countries, I won't use the hateful term civilized, the treacherous illusion-crushing process of aging is more difficult to bear. Am I having an easier time than women my age in London? Whoa, because it's true. She discusses how constantly distracted she is of her aging because of everything going around. She's always worried about, is the electricity going to come on? Is the water going to start functioning? Are we going to have traffic lights? And it's so hilariously Lebanese that I adore every second of it. And just one more quote that honestly made me laugh out loud was, will I live long enough to see a fully functional traffic light in Beirut? This book was written in 2013 and it's set in the 80s, and it still could have been written this very day. It still could have been written this very day, because tell me why sometimes people are just like deciding when you stop and when you let other one, like traffic lights and traffic junctions act as roundabouts. You sort of just wait for people to pass and then you're like, okay, cool, this is where I'll move on now. And it's so beautifully, painfully Lebanese, and I love it. I just think that Rabih captures Beirut in all of its most beautiful forms. He captures it in the ways that I love it being captured. He captures the beauty, the layers, the aging architecture, the architecture that hasn't changed since the wars, the beauty of it all, the beaches and the suns and the skies and Beirut, and the camps and the refugee camps and the cities and the villages and the homes and the people and the culture and the feeding each other and the eating together and the stores. It's done so well. I cannot fault it. Now on to my final part of this book review, which is my criticism of it, and I feel like I briefly touched on it already, and I just think that the literary references were too much. They were too on the nose. I have 2 English degrees, and I can still say with confidence, it's just a lot. I didn't even get half of these references, and I'm not criticizing it because I didn't get it, that I just maybe need to broaden my awareness. It's just that it's too much. I get it. I get that this is her entire life. Everything about her is books and literature and editing and translating and reading, but just take it a step back, like just lower it a little bit, you know. It doesn't need to be done that much, because it always takes me out of the story. Like a lot of the time it's very relevant to what is happening, but sometimes we're in this beautifully emotional and like cataclysmic moment for the character, and then just this random literary reference comes in and I'm like, man, get out of my face, like just get away from me, I don't want it there. And second of all, I felt like it was a little bit plotless. Again, I said this is not for people who care about plot. I don't always care about plot, I care more about character, but I felt like this read more like a memoir, and I'm not too big a fan of memoirs, but everything else made up for it, you know. Even actually, this book has no chapters. It's just endless stream of writing, and it's got like page breaks and like chapter breaks, but there's no chapters, there's no numbers, there's no like, okay, ends here, you can stop here and then there's a new page. No, you just have to like read, and I personally despise that. I hate that. So those are my 3 only criticisms for the book, but I'm so happy I read it, and it felt so good to read a book by a Lebanese author about a Lebanese woman set in Lebanon. It was a completely new experience for me, and I had the most fun with it, and I hope you'll read it. It's An Unnecessary Woman by Rabih Alameddin.